Okay, so I've been doing this series of musical patterns that will help you with your musical fluency, the ability to read music faster and easier. And the last musical pattern that I'd like to talk about is a melodic neighbor pattern. And you see this all the time. Melodies are made up of scales, skips, neighbors, and chords. That's what music is made up out of. So a neighbor pattern is really easy to recognize once you learn it. It just consists of a note that goes to its neighbor, either above it or below it, and then back. So imagine that you live here, and this is your house, and you have an upstairs neighbor, and you have a downstairs neighbor. So we have a neighbor pattern will start at your house, then you'll go upstairs, and then back down to your house, right? That's an upper neighbor. So let me just play what that would be. And it can be anywhere on the piano. It can be any sets of notes. But if we started on C, C's upper neighbor would be a D. So C, D, C is an upper neighbor melodic pattern. And then a lower neighbor of C would be C, B, C. Does that make sense? So just neighboring notes. One is going to be in a line and one is going to be on a space. It could start with either one, but just know that like notes that are next to each other, they are the opposite of each other as far as like reading the notation. So one's on a line, one's on a space, or one's on a space and the other's on a line. That makes sense? So neighbor patterns, we can have a neighbor pattern here. That's an upper neighbor. Let's try this. Can you tell me what this kind of pattern is? That started on an A. We went down to a G and then back up to an A. What kind of neighbor pattern was that? That was a lower neighbor pattern. So if you just get to recognize these little melodic figures, they're easy to see, they're easy to group a little bit more, chunking them together. So upper neighbors and lower neighbors make up something that we call ornaments. We make trills out of upper neighbors and lower neighbors. So a trill is just repeating an upper neighbor, wiggling it back and forth really, really fast. That's an upper neighbor. And then a lower neighbor can also be made into a trill. Okay, so those are neighbor patterns, notes that are right next door to each other. Okay, and then the last one I wanted to talk about was a double neighbor. The fancy name for a double neighbor is a mordent. And a mordent is when you go both upstairs and downstairs. So we can do it like this. So we start on C, we go upstairs to D, back to C, and then down to B, and then come back upstairs to C. Does that make sense? So that's called a double neighbor. Sometimes double neighbors skip the original pitch in the middle, so this is also a double neighbor. Okay, or it can go downstairs first. It can skip the middle pitch. Okay, all of those are called double neighbors, and that's just a melodic figure to be aware of. A lot of melodies